And Alan, I've introduced you here to the group. Great to have you part of this conference and the things you've accomplished in the short period of time you've been at the American Angus Association. Compliments for doing that. I'd like to have you share a little bit relative to the conversation and talk that Tom presented. I know I've heard you say many times, culture in an organization is very, very important. And share a little bit the thoughts and approach that you're taking at the association with the folks that are here today.
Sure, I'd be glad to, Larry. It's not very important, it's the most important thing. And I feel strongly about that. And in the months I've been here, it's just been reinforced. And what Tom said just a minute ago, and what John Sticka and what occurs at Certified Angus Beef is exactly the culture we're trying to build. I want people excited to come to work in the morning. I want them excited when they leave. They put in a full day and they've accomplished things and they're part of the team. I love his title, Chief Cultural Officer, because frankly I spend more time doing that than anything else. And when I'm out in the country, I get asked questions. I get asked two questions. First question is, how do you say your last name again? I get that a lot. Second question though, and I get this, and some of you in this room have asked me, what are your goals? What do you hope to accomplish? And my response is always the same, but I always get this blank looks when I say this, because it's like, well, isn't it more important? But I always say, I want to make the American Angus Association a great place to work. And it's not just that office in St. Joseph, it's the 13 regional managers as well. But I want people to feel empowered. I want them to be excited about coming to work. And I want them to know when they get to work, there's a certain consistency. There's an expectation for their performance and the way we treat people. And they'll be treated that way. But we talked at dinner last night. I can say it all day long. If I don't act it, it doesn't mean anything. Right? So to the point made earlier, you have to walk the talk. You've got to live it literally every minute of every day, 7 days a week.
Tom, one of the things I enjoyed listening to your comments, and I think it's the hardest thing when you're in charge of something for a long period of time, you own it. In the case of these family ranches or farms that they're involved with, it's your business. And all of a sudden, family members and employees come in. How did you, that initial period, okay, when they started telling you the change needed to occur, what are some insights that you'd share again, with the key things with these folks that you think are where they have to start? Because giving up power, giving up influence or authority is a real challenge. What's the first big step?
First big step is realizing that I'd spent 24 years raising this boy. And if he wasn't prepared to take over for what I did, I was a poor leader. And it was hard for me to have my son tell me I was wrong. But also I knew how brilliant he was. And I knew that he was a great leader. And I know afterwards I've learned that the real power of a leader is the transference of power to somebody else. And we did it with Tim and Erin. Erin's my daughter, that cute little blonde girl. She's my daughter. I love her dearly. She's more brilliant than Tim. She started a creative agency. But to be able to turn over power to them at an early age while I still have my faculties and my facilities and be able to help them and guide them and provide wisdom, because as an old man, I have wisdom, but I don't really have knowledge. So we crowdsource in our organization's wisdom and knowledge and bring everything. Every employee can participate, but especially those senior leaders can look at things from a different viewpoint. And sure, one thing I have is acquired wisdom. I have contacts and I have capital, but I don't understand the marketplace like they do because I don't buy much anymore. So the transference was just the jealousy of how can my kid be that damn smart to show me up in front of employees? Once I got past that, it was pretty easy.
Then you got to the stage where you actually got the satisfaction of seeing them successful. And actually that was a far better feeling than why are they questioning your authority?
Absolutely correct, Larry.
The other part I was curious about, because in most family operations that are here, you have a combination of family that are come back into the operation, sons, daughters, maybe possibly cousins or distant relatives. But the point is that they've got family involved, but you also have employees. You have a blend, as you did. You have a blend of employees as well as family. Different thoughts in terms of how you intersperse those as you brought in this culture of developing change? You need both parties buying in.
Yes, we call it the tasty family. It doesn't make any difference if you're a Velazquez, Rios, Walter, Suggs. It doesn't make any difference. If you follow the culture, you're part of our family. I have several brothers and sisters that came into the business, but they left. I asked them to leave because they did not follow values. They thought it was the family atmosphere and the arguments and things. So we cut those people out. And the ones that survived, the two brothers that survived and myself, we welcome these other people to say, you know, you're somebody special too. You're important. You know, your hair may be different, your clothes may be different, but you're somebody. You bring value to the organization. If you want ownership, you want to start something, we'll help you. We'll fund you for a piece of the action. We'll be the Shark Tank of Elk Grove Village, Illinois. But so to young people, that sends a clear message that you don't have to be part of the nepotism, part of the Walter family to be able to become a business owner and a partner with Tom and his brothers. That you just have to come up with ideas or participate in one of their investments for the owners that don't have an idea about what kind of product to start. So we start investments and say, who wants to be an owner? Join us in this investment.
Wonderful thoughts. Alan, let's come back to the American Angus Association and get a little more specific in terms of, you've given kind of an outline of some things you want to change. Be a little more specific. You've done some amazing changes here in a short period of time, I think, to change the kind of the culture and the feel there at the association. Share a few of the specifics that you feel have happened that are very important to the association and ultimately all these folks as members.
Sure. I came in with a blank slate. I knew the association, obviously. Actually, I was on a panel discussion one time for the board a number of years ago, and I remember it was down in the grant room. If you've been to their offices, it's downstairs in the basement. I remember thinking, what a drab place to work. It's got to be kind of depressing to be here, right? And never dreaming I would be back at the association someday. But I guess a couple of things, Larry. First off, we all know there were a lot of circumstances occurred here the past few years. But to me, they didn't occur because I wasn't part of it, right? So we've hired some former employees back. Frankly, one of the best hires I've ever made in my career, not just here, and I will tell you who it is. And Jerry Cassidy's just been an outstanding addition to our team. We've hired people that never had ever even heard of the American Angus Association. We hired our first director of human resources recently, Ms. Ladina Kuhn. And when she came into the office, I said, what do you know about the association? She says, well, you know, she goes, I realized Chris Stallo works here. I said, did Chris tell you about the job? She goes, oh, no. She goes, I saw it on your website. I said, well, how do you know Chris? She says, well, he was my son's wrestling coach for 5 years. So well, that's interesting there. So I coached Little League for a number of years, and I'm thinking, you know what? She must be a pretty good person, because if you coach a kid for 5 years with the same parent, they got to be a pretty good person, right? but I think that's part of it. The other thing, too, is in all seriousness, I've never worked around such a quality team, and it's not just the quality work they do, quality of people they are, right? And they care so passionately, they serve you so well. You'd be amazed at the hours they put in, and not just hours. I'm not talking about getting there at 8 and staying until 5:30. I'm talking like Sharon Mays. I'll roll in there at 6:30 and it looks like she's been there an hour already, right? So there's this high level of dedication. My job, frankly, is just to empower them, give them what they need, make it a fun place to work, and enjoy the success and celebrate the success. And I'll tell you, something happened yesterday, really small detail. It's not a small detail. It's a big detail. I was being introduced yesterday over at the Zoetis seminar at the Livestock Arena. And Dr. Dan Moser, who you all know, introduced me. And he said something, and it just and literally, I had to pause walking up there. But when he introduced me, rather than just saying the usual CEO, which, by the way, I hate the title. It's just so overbearing. But he said, I want to introduce, and this is the key word, he said, my friend and my boss. And I was very taken by that. I hadn't even told Dan that. If he's here, he's probably shaking his head, saying, I'll never say that again, right? But we're making progress, right? Because as you know, Tom, you treat people with respect. It's that simple.
Great message, Alan. Tom, from the standpoint, we all bring new employees into company, and I've always contended, first of all, that hiring is absolutely one of the most important things you do, but then the second thing tied right to it is how you get those employees started. Just share a few thoughts in terms of how you've changed the culture. Then a new employee comes on, and I know you don't have a lot of turnover, but you occasionally do have new either family members or people coming in. How do you orientate them to this culture that you've developed?
As part of the pre-screening process, we have them read the culture statement, And actually, they sit across the conference table for somebody as they read it, and we can watch their eyes to see at what line did they have an issue with. So right away, we know respect might be a concern or an issue. But once they pass the screening, and they've been screened for skill, and Howard said it earlier, we call it screen for skill, but hire for attitude. Once they've been vetted, they go to the team they're going to work with. And I'll give you an example. We had a new salesperson come into the organization, and he had to be screened by his sales team. There was 9 women and 2 men. Most of our clients are women, so we hire women to sell to women because they have a much better rapport. And they asked him one question. Here's the drop-dead question in the interview. How many days do you wake up happy? And they asked Tony this, and Tony says, I have a beautiful wife, Angie, and she is, beautiful in spirit and in looks, and a lovely daughter, Mia, and she is like that. And he says, I wake up happy 7 days a week because I'm very excited to live this life. Now, if it's less than 5, we don't want you. I wake up on Saturday and Sunday because I don't work. Then, after he's finished being screened by the team, they ask him to leave the room, and I walk in, shut the door. He's standing in the hallway. And I said, all right, close your eyes, raise your fists, thumbs up if you want Tony, thumbs down if you don't want Tony. And I put your hands down, and I said, all right, it was unanimous. Every one of you had your thumbs up, right? Okay, open up the door, says, Tony, welcome to your team. And at that point, the transference of power went to the team. The team now is responsible for grooming Tony. So Sherry Brown, the one who called me out on number 2, we fight all the time. She's an old hack, and I'm an old hack, and we have fun yelling at each other. But that's a special, loving relationship. Sherry comes up to my desk, and she says, I don't think Tony's getting it. I think we should get rid of Tony. I said, I didn't hire him. You did. Go fire him. Can I do that? I said, yeah, you hired him. She stood there thinking, and I said, well, you better get a consensus of everybody else because it was unanimous. I think I better learn how to work with them. I said, yeah, I think so. And once again, transference of power was the transference of problem. And so we found that having the teams, the people that we work with, do the final approval means that you own that person. You have to mentor them. Then we give the Gallup 12 to the employees that were new. Gallup 12, you can find it online. It's a great employee engagement survey. Just enter Gallup 12, it'll pop up. And it says, do I have the right tools? Does somebody care for me? Does someone appreciate who I am? Are they training me? We give this to new employees to find out whether their team is helping them. Okay. So that's the process how we've been able to bring great people in because they're hired by their teams.
Let me add one thing to that too. One thing we do is we bring people in and they'll interview literally with 7 people. And we all have an equal vote. My vote's no more than anybody else. The only time my vote counts more is if the 7 that's tied at 3-3, then I have to be the tiebreaker, right? But the one thing I do, and I also go check is, I go ask, after that candidate has gotten there and start the process, I go ask Ms. Cheyenne Pittman, who's our receptionist, how was he or she, how did they treat you? Because if they don't treat her right, I don't want them. Right.
Well said.
Great point. How then, for both of you, and Tom, I'll start with you, in that process, there's evaluation and there's accountability goals. So how is a semi-annual or annual evaluation, how does that fit into, and what role does that play then in the cultural atmosphere that you've created? Is that handled subtly during the course of just doing business on a daily, or do you have a more formal structure?
Well, actually, I think nothing destroys a positive culture more than a semi-annual or annual review. Because it means if you have something to say, why did you wait 11 months to say it? If you got something positive to say it immediately. Instant reward and recognition works wonders with people for motivation. We do a different type of a review, though. We do team-based reviews primarily, so it's team. Team shoulders the pressures. You know, as our corporate sales team, special events team, culinary team, event producers, what is the team accomplishing? And therefore, you crowdsource wisdom. But in our review process, every leader, team leader, has a credit card, has the right, we encourage them to do this. Take employees out every so often, staff members out to their favorite breakfast, lunch, or dinner place. Sherry, I've mentioned her. Sherry loves to buy a steak and a martini on my credit card. So we always go out and have steak. But we ask them 3 questions. See, they're familiar, they're in their familiar setting, they're very happy, they're relaxed. Now the ideas flow without filter. So we ask the first question is, where are you doing well? Gives them a chance to brag, right? We want to brag about where we're doing good, because you may not understand how good I'm doing, which is true. I may not. Number two, how can I help you? And the third one is, if you were me, what would you do better? And by that time, holy cow, the floodgates open, and holy cow, I guess that's pretty appropriate here. But the floodgates open and the ideas come out. Well, if I were you, I'd pay attention to this and I'd pay attention to that. And so the review is also 360. It comes right back to who I am or who our leaders are. So that's how we handle reviews. We try not to do it in a formalized setting because you have an aggressive defensive behavior that exists within the conversation.
Are you a companies vary in terms of how they do this, but do you do any type of a bonus system then if you've had a successful year, and how is that handled within the atmosphere that you have created within your company?
Yes, we play the great game of business that was developed by Jack Stack out of Springfield, Missouri. He bought a company for $9 million with $100,000 down, so he had an 89-to-1 debt-to-equity ratio, and he knew that he was going to fail. One major failure, $10,000 failure, is out of business. And Jack has become a personal friend. He's the first chapter of the book we wrote about how organizations develop culture. So every day we have lunch at 12:30 as a family. We have 2 buildings. 6 of the companies are within these 2 buildings. They shut the doors, lock the doors, turn the phones off, and come over and sit down and have lunch. And we saw that in the video. People walk in to sit down in the room and have lunch together. But on Wednesdays at 12:49, we start playing the great game of business. And everybody in our organization owns an expense item or a profit item, or their team does. And we go through the list, and it's run by our executive chef. It's run by an employee. And if you did great, everybody hoots and hollers and cheers. And if you didn't do good, you didn't hit your goal, there's silence. And I'll tell you that silence is deafening. So by the end of the session at 1:19, they know whether they're on target to hit their profitability goals. And in our industry, it's 5% profit, net income, cumulative profit before taxes. By the end of the quarter, for that quarter, for every percent over 5, they get 1 week's pay. So if we're on target to hit 3 if we could do 3 this quarter, they'll have 3 weeks' pay. So it's disparate, but it's equal. It's a paycheck. And then mini games. So each team, even if it's January and it's cold outside and our business is terrible in November, January, and February, you can, our sales teams can incentivize themselves. They define the metrics and they define the rewards, the goals and the rewards. And they'll say we'll make 2,000 phone calls, we'll visit 200 employees or 200 clients, whatever it may be, and this is the reward that we want. And it's something tangible, not just money. It's something they can put on their desk, beautiful crystal pieces, things that they as a team achieved. So we have teams setting goals and achieving success even if the organization doesn't.
Okay, let's kind of wrap this session up. We've just got a few minutes left. I think it's always important to look ahead to the future. One is to create things from the past, but it's also important to kind of look towards the future in terms of where are we heading, what are some of the things we do. Alan, I know you write frequently in the journal and have given lots and lots of thought to where you would like to see the association and opportunities for these great members that we have. Share some thoughts relative to what you view. You've, of course, gone through a strategic planning process, and share a little bit where we may be heading in the next few years.
Sure. First and foremost, it's about serving each of you. We're very clear. And 2 things. I'm going to back up a second. We have 3 core values, and they apply to everything we do, and they're pretty simple. And it's really the way you were all raised and the way you raise your children. We expect honesty, we expect respect, and we expect to act with integrity. And those values, they're not open for debate. I mean, they're just pretty straightforward, right? But then everything else is really up to staff to use their personality to work with things, to accomplish goals. We all know what our goals are. But ultimately, our job is to serve each of you. That'll continue to be our priority, but then I also see, because again, you're all leaders here. All of you are. We're leaders of this industry. I see that extending out to be a leadership role in the industry. But first and foremost, our focus is on the American Angus Association and its members.
Tom, Tasty Catering. You obviously have given a lot of thought to how you've changed it. Years' time, 5 years' time? What are you thinking about what you're going to try to look towards?
Should it be buried or burnt? I don't participate in strategic planning as an active member anymore. I sit there and provide advice if they have.
Good.
And this is once again the benefit of being an older person involved in the organization. So I'm wisdom, helping them, and they have such aggressive goals and ideas, and I think they're going to accomplish them. I never knew that I'd be in the motorcycle business 4 years ago when Tim started iMotorsports. Now he's bought another facility in Tampa, and he's the largest online motorcycle dealer. And I go, he never rode a motorcycle. So in a strategic plan with entrepreneurs, it's going to be which market opens up that we can put ourselves into. So there might not be tasty catering in 5 years. You know, there wasn't catering 35 years ago at the grand scale it was, and we're one of Chicago's top 4 caterers. And we weren't there 10 years. 10 years ago, we definitely were not at that level. But with this culture change, we became that. So we don't know where we're going. And so we got the right people on the bus. That's Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, which is what we use to build this culture. We got the right people on the bus. Now we found the right seats. Now they're going to drive that bus wherever they want to go. As long as it's producing a profit for me, I'm okay with that.
You made a great point, Tom. If many of you here have not read the book, Good to Great, you would that's a great place to start when you talk about how you deal with employees and changes that you can make. A book that many of us have read, and you can learn an awful lot from reading it.
If I could just interrupt, Larry, I agree with that. And if you don't have the time to read a deep book, contact me at tom@tastycatering.com, and I'll send you Jim Collins' approved 16-page Cliff's Notes compressed version of what's really important in that book. So just send me an email.
Perfect. And with that, we're going to close the panel here. Tom, again, thanks for being with us. Let's give him one more round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.